Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And Steven Lassan back for another episode to make his predictions for the upcoming weekend. Steven, how you feeling about these picks you got to make?
And Mike, is quarterback injuries, isn't it? It seems like all four of the SEC games have some sort of quarterback mystique, I guess, mystery. Also, week 12, like, what are we doing here? Can you believe it already? It's like the end of the season almost.
Well, it may be week 12, Steven, but it's the one thing we can't count. We can't count on these teams because they're just so inconsistent this year. But the one we can count on is cousin JR. What a guy. 1 minute in, he's already gifting a membership. Thank you, cousin JR. And he just gifted Jeff Jordan. Welcome to the family. Appreciate you, brother. But
JR is running a up-tempo offense this episode, isn't he? Right out of the gate scoring.
He's wasting no time. Just like our friends, as always, got to mention, Steven, our friends over at MyBookie. They sponsor the show, presenting sponsor this football season. Head on over to mybookie.ag, the online sports book. Put in that promo code, that SEC, THAT SEC over at MyBookie. They will double your initial deposit today. Steven's pretty good with these picks. He's been nailing a lot of these locks. So you might want to make note of his MyBookie lock of the week coming up here soon. You want to help the podcast, the best way to do it, sign up for MyBookie and use that promo code, that SEC. So without revealing your pick just yet, Steven, is there one game in particular, and you can tell us a game, but is there one that you're particularly torn on? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I'm actually torn on a couple here. I think LSU and Florida, pretty close, I think. And the spread's only 4.5, but I think that one is close to a toss-up. I mean, I think I'm assuming that DJ Lagway plays. Also very interested in Tennessee and Georgia. Of course, that's the other mystery here, Nico and his status. The unfortunate thing is kind of all the one-sided games, the Mercer and Alabama, Monroe and Auburn, we think won't be close. But yeah, those two kind of stand out. And the other two, Missouri, South Carolina, Texas, and Arkansas, double-digit spreads, but also, I think some intrigue for the underdog as well in those games.
And I didn't realize this till I made the headline for the episode, the Pick'ems, but we got 4 ranked teams on the road in conference play. So that sets up now some of their competition is ranked, like Georgia ranked, South Carolina obviously now ranked. So I'm not saying it's, upset city here, but the fact that we got 4 ranked teams on the road, that leads me to believe there could be some more chaos coming in the conference. Would you buy that?
You can definitely believe it. I think that has been a consistent theme throughout the season, is that teams that go on the road, ranked opponents, whether it's been in week 1, 2, 3, or 9, 10, and 11 weeks, there's upsets, there's chaos. This season, the gaps between the top and the middle of the conferences seem very clustered close together. So I think we're in for some upsets along the way. If it doesn't happen this weekend, I still think we got 2 more weeks of ranked opponents and all that. So it would not surprise me to see some chaos this weekend or even down the road.
All right, so we'll get to your picks, Steven, in just a moment. But we all got to shout out another sponsor of the show, PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports via our friends over at PrizePicks. They got one heck of a deal for all the cousins out there, Steven. Play $5, get $50 instantly over at PrizePicks if you use the promo code SEC. This is a really fun way to participate in the games in the weekend. You lock in. Many players from the marquee games have projected yards, touchdowns, interceptions, things of that nature, and you just say more than or less than. That's where you place your bet. And if you do it again at PrizePicks with that promo code SEC, a $5 play will get you $50 instantly. So of the selections this week, Steven, which prize picks are you most confident about?
I think, Mike, one big picture thought on the Prize Picks thing is that it like gives you like extra rooting interest too. Like if you're like, you're like me in the NFL on Sunday after your team plays, you're like watching your fantasy team. So this is a little extra incentive on Saturdays. In the Prize Pick selections for this week, let's start with the Texas and Arkansas game. I like Quinn Ewers. I'm going to go more than. He is at 298.5 in passing yards. He just threw for over 300 last week. We know Arkansas ranks 121st in the country in defensive success rate against the pass. So I like Ewers to have another big day. I think he goes more than on the passing yards total. Also, give me the more than side of passing touchdowns. He is at 1.5 at Prize Picks. I'm going all in on Quinn Ewers this weekend. I think he's going to have a big day for Texas.
Right, and I just showed his statistics here, Stephen. He's ninth in the SEC in passing yards, 1,700. He's fifth in touchdown interception ratio with 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But obviously the caveat, he's been injured. He's missed a couple games. But last week he looked as sharp as ever, just torched the Florida Gators defense. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. I love those selections.
I think the off week, allowing him to get a little bit more healthy, knock the rust off, really showed there. I would also take Gunnar Helm on the more than side. He's at 44.5. He's been about 42 or more in each of the last 4 games. So I would take a chance on him. When you look at the receivers for Texas, if you're thinking like me, Ewers could have a good game. It's a little hard to figure out which one's going to go off, but I think Gunnar Helm has been pretty consistent. So give me the steady play of Gunnar Helm to tag team with Ewers on Prize Picks this week.
Well, speaking of consistency, real quick, Steve, I want to give a shout out to one of our favorite cousins. Cousin Too Slick. What a guy. He just gifted 5 memberships on the channel. Sierra Mike, welcome to the family. Tim Reynolds, Arizona Sooner fan. Sorry about the season, but welcome to the family, Arizona. And Dobby, and Baker Knight. We're all gifted memberships. Thanks to our buddy Too Slick. What a hell of a guy Too Slick is. You know what, Steven?
We got some great cousins out there handing out all these memberships so far. Man, what a good group of guys and gals we got hanging out here, right?
If Too Slick was a Prize Picks, I'd get him every time. You know what?
Yeah, he and JR are they got to be like front runners for SEC Most Valuable Player, right?
Yeah. All right, who else are you liking on the Prize Picks, Steven?
Let's go over to the Arkansas side of things. Let's take Taylon Green. He's at 0.5 interceptions. You just need him to throw 1 to hit this. I'm going to take the more than side of this. He has thrown interceptions in 4 of Arkansas's 6 SEC games this season. So I will take him to throw 1 against Texas. I will also take the more than side for Luke Haas. He's at 24.5 receiving yards. I think we've seen him pick up some steam in the passing game the last few weeks. So if the spread plays out like it is, Arkansas will need to be throwing late to keep pace with Texas. And I think that benefits Haas. But I would definitely take Taylon Green on the more than side for interceptions.
Yeah, Luke Haas, he's another one that's been kind of banged up. But when he's healthy, one of the better weapons. Arkansas has one of the better tight ends in the conference. So, yeah, I see. Not only is there logic, good player. I love that pick. I'm not gonna lie. I like it. I may use that tomorrow.
Quarterbacks and tight ends so far pretty consistent. I've got a couple plays in the Georgia-Tennessee game here, Mike. And should say this is a hard game to get a read on because of the recent play by Georgia. Of course, Nico's status, a bit of a mystery. So let's take Trevor Etienne. He's at 69.5 rushing plus receiving yards. Let's take the less than side of that. Just with the injuries, Tennessee's defensive front could be a tough afternoon for that Georgia rushing attack. So I like the less than side there for Trevor Etienne. And on the less than side for Tennessee, Nico, he's either at 182.5 passing yards or 202.5 passing plus rushing. Let's take the less than side of that. Bit of a mystery if he plays, but I think this is going to be a very lower scoring defensive game.
Right. And if Tennessee needs Nico to run the football, could be an issue given his status. Heck, we don't even know for sure if he's going to play. All indications are he is. I don't care what the bear says, Steven, but I think Nico plays. But again, do you really unleash him? You kind of need to. I guess a team of this caliber on the road, but I don't know how safe that is. So that's going to be one of the more interesting storylines of the weekend.
Yeah, it really feels like this game could be like a 20-17, 24-20 kind of game. Not only to your point on Nico's health and keeping him upright in the pocket with Georgia's pass rush. I mean, the way that Tennessee's offense has played on the road this year in SEC play makes you think that scoring points is probably going to be pretty limited. So even with even if I think if he was 100% healthy, I still think this would be a lower scoring game, which plays into the less than side for those prize picks.
Mm-hmm. All right. So do you have any more prize picks before we get to your weekly selections?
That's it, my friend. I'm hoping to go perfect and win some money for the Cousins this week.
All right. So let's get into the Week 12 SEC predictions. And a couple of these games, Stephen, real quick, let's just hit on them. Just your thoughts on a final score. We don't even have spreads for these over at MyBookie or quite frankly anywhere that I could find. But Murray State at Kentucky. I mean, again, should be a laugher. Anything at all that you want to say about Kentucky and give us kind of like a score prediction?
Yeah, I think if you're Kentucky, there's two things here. The first one is you're 3-6, fighting to keep your bowl hopes alive. So the schedule is tough, but you got to win this one to get to the next two. I think given the opponent, Murray State's not very good. They should just take care of business here. And I would like to see the two quarterbacks for Kentucky do well. You know, Vandegrift and Wimsatt, you want to see them play well, build some confidence down the stretch. So this should be a one-sided game in favor of Kentucky. Murray State lost 51-0 earlier this year in Missouri. So give me Kentucky 45, Murray State 3.
Oh, that's right. I forgot what a barn burner that was in the opener. I tried to wipe that game from my memory. Another one I'm probably going to have to wipe from my memory, Stephen, is Alabama hosting Mercer. These games should be outlawed this late in the season, but it is what it is. Any thoughts on Alabama as they destroy Mercer?
Mike, it's about time to fire up that SEC needs 9 games in conference play argument once again as these games dot the schedule this week. But yeah, I mean, Mercer is a pretty solid FCS team. They're ranked in the top 10. I think they're 9-1 this season. They haven't played a power conference opponent this year, but they lost 73-7 to Ole Miss last year. So despite being top 10, they got smoked by Ole Miss last year. So I think the biggest thing for Alabama, you got to win. You got to play as many players as possible, avoid injuries if you can, and get Jalen Milroe in and out, and don't use his legs. Save those for Oklahoma and Auburn. So give me Alabama 59, Mercer 10.
I don't know if I got that much faith in old Mercer there to get 10, but yeah, there'll be a lot of backups in this one. Cousin Kyle, appreciate you. He said, what did we name this weekend? I named it Old Rivalries Saturday because we got quite a few classic rivalries here in the SEC, but one that is not quite a rivalry, and it better not be a game, Stephen. Let's see if I got my handy-dandy graphic here. Texas A&M hosting old New Mexico State. Now, we do got a spread for this, courtesy our friends MyBookie. It's A&M's favored by 39.5 points. The over-under, 54 total points. This is a night game, 6:45 Central on the SEC Network. Please tell me, Stephen, that A&M is going to get us a huge win here.
Yes, they should. Mike, good news. Diego Pavia is not walking through that door on Saturday night for New Mexico State. They're one of the worst, probably 20 teams in the country. If New Mexico State does anything well, which they're one of the better rushing teams in Conference USA. They love to run the ball, shorten the game, and kind of play a lower possession game. They just don't have the passing offense to be able to keep pace with some of these teams, and their defense is frankly pretty bad. this year. So this is not last year's New Mexico State team. They are at the bottom of Conference USA this year. So I don't think there's a ton of concern here for Texas A&M. I think the biggest thing for me with the injury to Le'Veon Moss, I think this is a game where you should probably try to let Marcel Reed throw to win. Save the wear and tear on the running backs, save the wear and tear on Marcel Reed, and that sets you up for a 2-game season to get to the SEC championship game. So I've got Texas A&M 45, New Mexico State 10. It wouldn't shock me if New Mexico State covered just because of the style and like a lower possession game. But like I said, this isn't Diego Pavia's New Mexico State Aggies. This is a very bad New Mexico State team.
Yeah, Aggie on Aggie crime over here. I mean, this is all I can think of for such a laugher like this, Stephen. But any advantage for A&M that had this game played last week? Certainly, I'm not suggesting it would have been close or anything, but sometimes you let one opponent beat you twice. Now that you've had a extra week to kind of lick your wounds, get healthy, as you said, there's some key injuries on A&M. Now they'll have extra time to get those guys situated for this game. Do you think it's better to have 2 weeks for this one as opposed to playing it last week?
How much time do you think Texas A&M spent on New Mexico State? Do you think they spent it on Auburn, Texas, or New Mexico State?
I think they spent and they'll never say this, but I bet you they spent the majority of the time on Texas.
I agree with you. So I guess to answer your question, I think the off week was probably good for A&M because basically they got 2 weeks to get ready for those 2 SEC games. Had they played right after South Carolina, maybe it'd be a little bit closer, but this New Mexico State team just doesn't move the ball well enough through the air, and it's hard for me to see them being able to pound Texas rush defense. And I mentioned this on Monday's show, but they have a pretty talented running back. Seth McGowan played at Oklahoma a few years ago, so they got some talent in the backfield, but I think regardless of where it is, they're just not built to win a game like this right now.
All right. How about this one, Stephen? ULM, red hot ULM. They're playing for their bowl lives here, as is Auburn on the plains here. Auburn favored, of course, by 24 points. Over-unders 46 total points. And this is 12:45 Eastern, 11:45 Central kick on the SEC Network. Tell me, Stephen, tell me, Auburn, they need a win. Tell me they get it.
I think they do, Mike. This isn't last year's New Mexico State team. And in fact, this ULM team is worse than that New Mexico State team that won last year. So if they lose this game, oh boy, it's going to be a rough week. So I think Auburn just takes care of business. And I think this is about just winning and sort of extending your season, giving yourself a chance to fight to bowl eligibility. This gets you to 4-6. You get Texas A&M coming at your place, and then you get Alabama. It's tough, but that's how you kind of keep this season going. And I think if you're Auburn, there's the kind of quarterback uncertainty here. Is it going to be Peyton Thorne? Is it going to be Hank Brown? Is it going to be someone else? This is a good opponent to work some of those quarterback questions out. I mean, ULM's defense started this year playing better, but they've been tailing off as the season goes along. They're giving up over 200 rushing yards a game. And offensively, they're just really not built with firepower. They're a run-first team, so they really need a lower possession game to have a shot. It's tough for me to see it. They lost to Texas 51-3 earlier this year. Give me Auburn 38, Louisiana Monroe 10.
Well, what if they play 9 out of 9? No, okay. Let's move on to a legitimate game here. Stephen, we only got a couple here, and this is part of the old rivalry weekend that I'm calling it. Very excited about this one. Maybe a little trap game. Who knows? Texas, mighty Texas, on the road at Arkansas. Arkansas hates your guts. Arkansas needs this one to make a bowl game. Of course, they got other opportunities, but a lot to play for here for the Razorbacks. Over under 57.5 points. Texas, though, favored by 13.5. This is a noon Eastern, 11 Central kick, nationally televised on ABC. What's your thoughts on this one?
I think the stakes are pretty high for both teams. I mean, just the starting point, the rivalry. It's great to have this back, going forward as SEC opponents. But for Texas, given the strength of schedule and some of the conversations that could happen in the next few weeks, I think style points, being impressive, looking impressive on the road could matter for Texas if we get into that kind of conversation with the playoff. Also for Arkansas, I think as we go down the stretch here, they should beat Louisiana Tech to get to 6 wins. I am curious though, after that game against Ole Miss, can they keep it close against Texas or Missouri? There's still that kind of question about what happens with Sam Pittman. He's on the hot seat. It's cooled. I don't think you want to get blown out twice by Texas and Missouri to finish the season if you're Sam Pittman. So it really feels like the stakes are very high for both teams. Texas fighting for the playoff, SEC championship, a little bit of respect for Arkansas, welcoming an old rival. They hate them. And also, I think how this game starts could be pretty important because Arkansas's had 2 weeks to get ready. And I think you want to get off to a fast start because if you can get off to a fast start, you keep the crowd in it a little bit longer. It becomes a little bit more hostile for Texas. The anxiety starts setting in. So this one's got my intrigue level very high on Saturday.
Who is do you think wins it if it's a high scoring game? Is it Texas because of their offense and everything, or could it be? I mean, a little wild card Arkansas when Taylor Green is on. I know he's been very inconsistent, but when he's on, he is awesome. And if he comes back for another year, I believe he's got another year of eligibility, perhaps. If he does, I mean, if he continues to progress, I don't think it's that unreasonable to say he could be one of, if not the best quarterback in the SEC next season. He's got a long way to go before he gets there. But, I heard Sam Pittman today, positive update on JaQuinton Jackson. Sounds like he's going to go. So, they got weapons too. High scoring game in Fayetteville. Do you think Arkansas can win that game, or does it have to be ugly, muck it up because of their defense and in particular their pass defense? If it's a high scoring game, Texas might be going up and down the field on them. Who do you think is favored in a high scoring game?
It's a good question. I think Arkansas could win either. I think if you had your preference, it's probably lower scoring. I think about that game against Tennessee. I know Tennessee's offense isn't quite what Texas is, but I think the game that probably benefits Arkansas the most is JaQuinton Jackson, Taylor Green being able to run the ball, keep away, make Quinn Ewers sit on the sideline. Because I think the more possessions that they have, given where Arkansas is in pass defense, efficiency pass defense, success rate, whatever you want to look at, they're near the bottom of the SEC. So I think if you're 3 and out, you're not possessing the ball, you're giving Ewers and those receivers a chance to strike downfield, that kind of spells trouble. I think if Arkansas is playing keep away, Taylor Green is on the money, he's having that big time performance, then I think Arkansas has got a chance to make this a 4-quarter game. I think a lower scoring game would probably be to their benefit.
Mm-hmm. And I would have to imagine that Arkansas's defensive front, if they're going to be competitive and perhaps even pull a stunning upset here, that defensive front's got to dominate Texas offensive line.
100%, Mike. I think that's the key to the game because I think we've seen, you can kind of pressure Ewers at times. Vanderbilt did this, Georgia did this. They kind of created some turnovers with the tip passes. There's an opportunity there. If you can get after Ewers, slow that passing game down, because otherwise the secondary for Arkansas could have a hard time covering those Texas receivers. Maybe they get Jalen Braxton back, and that helps a lot. But still, I think even with a full complement of defensive backs, it's an uphill battle for Arkansas. So I think, yes, if I'm Arkansas, that is the formula. Good pass rush, win the line of scrimmage on defense, get the crowd in it, control the ball, time of possession offensively with that run game of Jackson and Taylor Green.
How about this question? Appreciate you, Bobby G. He says, going by Texas schedule, Arkansas may be one of the best teams they face. He's not saying the best. He's saying one of. But I think that's a fair statement. Obviously, Georgia would be number one. Vanderbilt's up there. Michigan? I mean, I guess the question is, who would you power rank? Stephen, Florida, Michigan, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. I mean, those teams are pretty muddled together.
I think it's probably the third best team, right? I mean, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Florida's wasn't at full strength.
I would even go so far as to say maybe the second best.
Yeah, I could get on board with that. Yeah, Arkansas and Vanderbilt, I think, are pretty close in power ratings. So, yeah, especially with this game being on the road, too, because Fayetteville would be pretty hostile, I think, to Texas, given the circumstances.
All right, well, that being said, we have found a path. Who's going to actually win this game?
One other key, Mike, I think staying out of 3rd and long if you're Arkansas is key. I don't think you want to be asking Taylor Green to win 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 all night. I think there's a path for Arkansas. I just think Texas is better. Give me the Longhorns 34, Arkansas 20.
You big Texas homer. Okay, how about this one, Steven? I can't wait for this one. Two teams that just won't go away. Missouri at South Carolina. South Carolina favored at home by 12.5 points. The over-under 45.5. This is a 4:15 Eastern, 3:15 Central kick on the SEC Network. Eli Drakowitz, he's got a couple daughters, and he's got one son named Shane Beamer. Who wins, or thoughts on this one?
And please tell me the new mayor of Columbia, cousin Shane's going to be there to hand out the trophy, right?
He is not picking. This may be the first time in history he omits himself from making a prediction.
Suddenly, his internet had a strange breakup at that time. It was unexplainable, but no, Mike, it's I think the first thing that comes to mind is the implications for the playoff. I mean, both teams still alive. It would take a lot for them to get into the playoff, but they're still alive. Either way, there's also sort of the big picture thing for the season. I mean, South Carolina is rolling. They got a chance to finish with 9 wins. If you're Missouri, you win out, you get to 10 victories. That's still a pretty good season, even if you miss the playoff. So there's sort of a momentum, positioning, playoff angle to all of this. And then, of course, there's the whole series trend that's definitely favored Missouri.
Mm-hmm. And where are we anticipating? Again, I know it's early. We still don't have the first injury report's going to be coming out this evening in about an hour and a half. Are we assuming that Brady Cook does not play? Because that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just kind of curious where you're at because you're about to make a prediction.
I think that spread, and I hate to read too much into it every week, but that to me is telling us that Vegas does not think he's going to play. And I would sort of go along with that too. I think it would be a long shot if he plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I heard it this way, Stephen. I mean, this ain't the game to bring him back, even, unless he's 100%, which how could he be? How banged up he is. But with this Gamecock defense, I don't even know if, let's say he's like 70, 80%. I wouldn't risk it. Not against this defense, would you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think they need him to win. And I think it's going to be tough if Brady Cook is like 70, 80% and he can play. Probably going to be tough to keep him off the field, right? They would probably have to saw his like ankle off or his wrist for him to not suit up. But, I think maybe the thing for Missouri that gives you some confidence is that Drew Pine did sort of make some big throws late in that game against Oklahoma. Now this is a totally different environment, going on the road, Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart coming after you. You've got a really good South Carolina secondary as well. So I would be surprised if he played, but I think Missouri needs Brady Cook to win.
Do you put any stock into Missouri being a team that just seemingly just keeps finding ways to win, and even though the odds may be stacked against them, that could give them an extra boost of confidence? Again, they own this team. So
Yeah.
all week they've had to hear you're a 2 touchdown underdog to this team that you literally cannot lose to. Could that provide some kind of edge, at least psychological?
Absolutely. You'd have to say going into this that Drinkowitz has South Carolina's number. It's different with every different team and personnel turnover, but they're even if Missouri is shorthanded at quarterback, there are still some ways that they can win this game. I mean, you look at what they could do with a ground game. Their defense has been pretty solid. I know on the road it hasn't, but for the most part, it's been pretty good this year. So, I think this is a game where you could still lean on your defense. You get enough out of the ground game. Mike, to your point, you get a turnover like Oklahoma, the game last week, you just find a way to win. So by no means, even a shorthanded Missouri team, they are still very dangerous on Saturday.
Is it possible that Drew Pine, they kind of found something with him? Because again, late in that Oklahoma game, for 3.5 quarters, it was awful. But then they must have figured something out because they went up and down the field to close that game when they had to. Any chance they could carry that over to this week?
I think so. It's never a good sign when a fan in the stands, perhaps Cousin Shane, had more passing yards than Missouri in the first quarter, right? um, to answer your question, Mike, I do think they found some confidence late with Drew Pine, and I think they can carry that over. Like I said, it is a little different environment though, going on the road to Williams-Brice. So anytime you can get the ball in the hands of Weeze or Burden, that's like your quarterback's best friend. So if you can get it in the vicinity, those two guys are good enough to catch it and run with it. So it's a tough spot, but maybe that confidence carries over this week.
If you were Missouri defense, who would you be more concerned about stopping in this game, Lenore Sellers or Rocket Sanders?
I think I got to go with Sellers just because I think Mike, you feel free to disagree with me on this one. I feel like he's taking strides every week as a passer, and of course, he can still hurt you with his legs. But I would almost rather, if I'm Missouri, I want to stop the plays in the passing game and just sort of make them a little bit one dimensional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you, but I think Sellers is awesome. We just had a donation shout out Trip Hood. He says Sellers 2025 Heisman. I mean, he's looking like he could be a legitimate candidate in the future if he continues to progress. But I think the engine that's getting him going is Rocket Sanders. So I would focus more on him and make Sellers beat you with his arm, which he has already shown he can do. But he's also shown he can make some mistakes. So I think that'd be the path but again, it's pick your poison at this point. You know what?
I'm changing my vote after listening to you. You were so convincing on that one. The Sellers Heisman thing actually kind of raises an interesting point on the SEC next year. Jalen Milroe could go to the NFL. Garrett Nussmeier could go to the NFL. We'll see about Nico, but I hope those guys come back, because you think about how good the quarterback play has been this year and what it could be next season. And certainly Lenore Sellers, if he keeps on this trajectory, he's going to be right there among the best in the SEC and potentially nationally next year.
Right. And I heard someone saying that, I think it was Aaron Murray on his podcast, he gets to call all these games, and Sellers was just emphatic. I'm a passer. I'm a I can beat teams from the pocket. That's how he was early in the season, and he's still, I'm not saying he's not that, but he has it fully embraced. Case in point, the A&M game, and that he's a physical specimen that can run people over. So
yeah,
you have both aspects of that in your game. You just make it so difficult to stop as he progresses as a passer. But man, when he gets going, he's got a full head of steam. Good luck. People don't want to hit 240-pound hulks coming at you. You know?
Was it the third down play against Texas A&M that he ran over somebody? I think it was third down. It was almost like he charged up, and you could see the defender like, oh no, not him coming at me. Also, 3 straight SEC games without an interception. That's a pretty big jump, I think, based upon what we saw earlier in the year. And also got to give Dow Loggins credit. I mean, he's been South Carolina's offense has been progressing, and Sellers is a big reason why.
I'm laughing because it was more like Sellers tackled him is what happened for a first down. So, all right, Steven, time to make your pick. Who you got here?
I'm going to go with Missouri to cover, but I'm going to take South Carolina 27, Missouri 20.
You just broke Cousin Shane's heart. I just want you to know that.
I was making a prediction for him since he can't.
All right, how about this old rivalry, Steven? LSU at Florida. The shoe toss game, of course. LSU favored by 4.5 points on the road, over under 55 total points. And this is a 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central kick on ABC. And I assume based on the spread, again, we keep maybe we're putting too much stock in the spreads here, Steven. The injury report will come out in about an hour and a half. But based on the spread, I have to believe the thinking is DJ Lagway will play. Do you agree with that?
I agree. I think Billy Napier has also been somewhat optimistic that he's going to come back and play this week. So I'm going to bank on DJ Lagway suiting up on Saturday. And I think for these two teams, despite LSU's loss last week and Florida's situation this year, there's still a lot at stake here. I mean, Florida, if they win this game, I think they're beating Florida State. That gets you to 6 wins. That gets you to a bowl game. It maybe helps with recruiting, a little off-season momentum. So there's still a lot at stake here for Billy Napier. And then for LSU, there's still some scenario where they could get to the SEC championship game. So they are very viable here. So despite last week's loss, they've got to put that in the rearview mirror and focus on these next 3 SEC games, because there is still a very viable path for them to make the SEC championship game. And if they win, they're going to the playoff. So there's still a lot at stake here, like I said, for both teams.
Yeah, but as I'm sitting here looking at it, Steven, back-to-back losses. You're barely favored against Florida. I mean, you'll likely be favored regardless what happens in this one against Vanderbilt and Oklahoma at home. But, I mean, this could be Billy Napier 2.0 here. 5 losses to end the season like last year. You know what I mean? Like, I truly don't think that'll happen. But if they lose this weekend, I'll start to entertain it.
If LSU loses to Florida on Saturday, Mike, how ugly is it going to get next week? Talk radio, Baton Rouge. It's not going to be pretty, right? He
may cancel his Feinbaum appearance for the first time ever. You know what?
Yeah. Oh, for sure, man. It could get ugly in a hurry here. I mean, I still think LSU will probably win, against Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, but going on the road and losing to a shorthanded Florida team with everything still at stake would not sit well for sure. And there's so many interesting matchups within this game. You've got the Florida rushing attack against a very vulnerable LSU defense. You've got Garrett Nussmeier against a shorthanded Florida secondary. There are so many interesting angles to this, but it almost all comes back to injuries and where is the mindset for these two teams. I mean, Florida keeps fighting week in and week out, and LSU's coming off the back-to-back losses. So there's definitely a little bit of I think this is a very dangerous game for LSU if DJ Lagway plays and is close to 100%.
Yeah, I think you might be right. So give us your prediction, Steven. Who do you like in it?
I'm going to take LSU 27, Florida 24.
Oh, man, right down to the wire, huh?
I think there are a couple things that I'm going to be watching for in this one is, how healthy is DJ Lagway early on? If he plays, is he mobile? Because if he is, we saw what Jalen Milroe did. Not expecting the same things, but I think he can move around and make enough plays. You also have the balance of LSU too. Like, can they get Caden Durham going? Because they've been too much on Garrett Nussmeier. He's been turning the ball over. I think they've got to get back to playing complementary football in order to win here. So I think if DJ Lagway plays 100%, I think all of the losses for LSU, the playoff situation, I think LSU may go in a little sleepy, and I think Florida's got a chance to win this game, but I'm picking LSU straight up.
All right. How about the game of the week here, Steven? Tennessee at Georgia. Georgia, though, favored by 10 points. Still, my word, what is going on down in Athens? Over-unders 48.5. Night game, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central on ABC. Could be, well, quite frankly, it is. It's an elimination game for Georgia. Could be. I don't think it is for Tennessee, but could be. Thoughts on this matchup?
You nailed it, Mike. I think let's start there. SEC championship, college football playoff implications. If Georgia loses, they are out. I know their strength of schedule is going to be number 1, number 2 in the country. It's just hard to see them getting in the field with 3 losses. And just a kind of moment of like craziness to think about that. The preseason favorite could be out of the mix if Georgia loses on Saturday. The other side of that is Tennessee, if they lose this game, still very much alive. It gets a little complicated with all the teams vying for space in the playoff. But Tennessee, if they win this game, takes a big step forward to the SEC championship game. So there is a ton at stake in terms of this year, but also I think the big picture, Tennessee has really struggled against Georgia. Georgia has won 7 in a row. Most of those weren't close. I think all of that, Tennessee should be motivated on Saturday. And then you think about motivation for Georgia every week. I've been saying it, a lot of other people have too. Georgia's going to be motivated. They're going to be angry. We saw that against Texas. We really haven't seen that a whole lot this year. So I am very curious to see how this Georgia team looks on Saturday, if they play like they have most of the season, or if we see maybe one of their better games because of what's at stake and sort of the doubt that's been kind of starting to get out there in the ecosystem of college football about Georgia.
Mm-hmm. How do you anticipate Georgia's offensive line holds up in this? Will it be significantly better because they're at home, you think?
I think so. I wouldn't expect that they dominate Tennessee's defensive front, but I think at home, the weather, maybe not being as sloppy, I suspect they'll hold up better. The injury report will be significant there for Georgia, just how healthy they are. But this is another, significant test. I mean, just like Ole Miss came at Carson Beck last week, I suspect Tennessee will have success getting to the quarterback. So not only is it pressure, it's run game and also preventing turnovers. Don't allow James Pierce to get in Carson Beck's face, deflect a pass that's intercepted. So offensive line is critical just for pass protection, but there are some other angles to that as well.
Assuming Nico plays, I see in the comments they're saying Josh Pate I like Josh Pate, even though he was dead wrong about Hugh Freeze. I don't think he would have the knowledge over the people that are there locally. And I'm talking like Austin Price come out today and said things are looking good. So, again, that's just my piece on that. But assuming Nico plays, who do you have more confidence in, Nico or Carson Beck? Because I would assume most people would say Carson Beck until they actually watched him the last couple of weeks,
Yes. My answer is going to be Carson Beck for the simple reason, and maybe I'm getting suckered into this. I do think Georgia at home, with the stakes being high, some motivation, I think a cleaner game is coming for Carson Beck on Saturday, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, shout out Thomas. He's got a question here. I know the answer. I want to test the CFB encyclopedia over here. When's the last time Georgia lost 2 in a row? And let's narrow this down to just regular season, because I think that's what Thomas was really asking.
Oh, it's been it's definitely been like before 2020, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a good question. When was that?
2016.
That's right.
So that, I believe that would have been Kirby's first year.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
Yeah.
And their home streak is insane. It's something like, what is it, like I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think it's like 30 games or something crazy like that.
The 2016 Georgia Bulldogs lost to Vanderbilt by 1 point and lost to Florida the next week.
Right. So it has been a while. But again, sometimes those things matter, sometimes they don't. Lane Kiffin can't win the big game. That's all anybody wanted to tell me last week. He whooped Georgia's ass. So
you picked it too.
Yeah.
So you had confidence in Lane Kiffin.
I mean, some of those things don't really matter. And yeah, 2021 Georgia, 2022, 2021, 2022. I mean, these teams are elite. That's not this Georgia team. It's just not. And I don't know. That's my piece on that. But hey, shout out, man, what a guy. Cousin Rick just gave us $50.
Thanks, cuz.
Oh, man, never mind. I don't like Rick. He says, Dogs beat Tennessee. Florida beats LSU at A&M Texas game will be epic. Gig 'em. Love the show. Cousins, show some love. Hit that like button. What a message. Appreciate you. Cousin Rick, I'm just kidding. You're one of our favorites. So I appreciate that. You're just wrong about that pick. But
And Mike, can you imagine what the stakes are going to be like when Texas and Texas A&M play? Like I had like a moment earlier today where I was thinking about the week of rivalries, and I was like, oh, Texas A&M's back, and I started thinking like, oh man, like what could be at stake for SEC and college football playoffs? So I'm already fired up about it.
Yeah. Well, how about this Tennessee boy? What a name! What a name! He says he's got confidence. Beck throws a pick. Let's assume Beck throws a pick, which is not a given, but he leads the SEC. I think he leads the country maybe in interception. He's got 12 of them, I think. If he throws at least one pick, yeah, he's got 12 on the year. What's your confidence that Tennessee wins? Because they've at least forced one turnover.
I think it goes from, I'm trying to put a percentage on it. I would say, I think this is closer to I'm assuming Nico plays.
Right.
Like a 50-50 game, 60-40. I would say it definitely falls in the like 50-50 category.
Right. So, I mean, you're thinking these teams are so close this year. I mean, any turnover will be significant in determining the outcome.
Yeah, I do. And I think for a couple reasons, to what you were getting at is, what does Georgia kind of do 100% well? I think their defense could be outstanding on Saturday night if Tennessee can't land some of those big plays in the passing game. But offensively, I mean, we could go down the list. I mean, they've struggled to run the ball. They get inconsistent, big plays at receiver. Offensive line's banged up. Carson Beck's throwing interceptions. I mean, there's a lot of individual concerns and positional group concerns coming into this game. And I think that says to me, Tennessee's defense is very capable, especially up front, of going into Athens and playing well and keeping this game within one score. So I do think if turnovers are going to be key here. If Beck throws one, I still think Georgia wins. I think if you get to 2 or 3, it gets a little iffy.
And Tennessee has not allowed over 20 points this entire season, but they've not faced an opponent of this caliber on the road, certainly, and maybe not a caliber of this opponent yet. So take that for what it's worth. What's your confidence level that Georgia could be the first team to get at least 21 points on this Tennessee team?
I think they got a pretty good chance. I've been wrestling with this game a lot since we talked on Monday, because I keep going back to my mind of the series trend and how Georgia has dominated, and I keep thinking Georgia's going to wake up this week. This is a bad week to play Georgia. It might be for Tennessee, but I think given the stakes, I think Georgia gets there over that 20-point barrier. It won't be easy, but I think they do.
What will be more important for Tennessee to get a victory? Running the ball, and I'm not saying they have to run wild or anything, but just positive gains, consistently, or hitting big plays over the top with the passing attack?
I think they need to hit a few big plays. If this makes sense, I think they can open up some of the rushing lanes with Dylan Sampson if they're able to hit a couple big plays. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, because that is essentially what every defense is challenging them to do. I mean, it was bewildering, Stephen, last week against Mississippi State. State was just letting guys, I mean, one-on-one, and it was like easy pickings, which it's been that all year. But either the throws are not being made or balls are being dropped. So, yeah, I mean, I would make Tennessee beat me through the air. I would not let Dylan Sampson beat me. And the problem for Georgia, though, potentially, Georgia has been of the caliber, and this is why they've been so successful against Tennessee. They don't have to load the box. Or at least they haven't in years past. They can match up with Tennessee with a light box. I don't think they can this year, and I think plays will be made, or plays will be there for Tennessee to be made. The big question is whether they'll make them or not.
Georgia, in terms of big plays allowed, 30 plus passing plays allowed, has already allowed almost as many as all of last season. I think it's 11. I think they gave up 12 last year. So to your point, Dylan Sampson has been so good week in and week out in the SEC, like 100 yards every week. And I think it's going to be tough probably for him to get there. They may have to pop a big run, or he's probably going to have a lot of carries on Saturday night. But I think if Tennessee can land one or two of those shots downfield, not only does it like flip the field position, but I think you got a pretty good chance to win this game, open up some rushing lanes for Dylan Sampson. If Nico is healthy, that rushing ability maybe gets kind of a third down conversion that's critical. But I mean, just as we're talking about this matchup, the margins for Georgia just feel a lot tighter than they have in previous years. Like, I still trust their defense, but the way the offense is played, yes, they are at home, but it also feels like they're more vulnerable than they have in the last couple years.
Mm-hmm. And going back to that Alabama game, that's how Tennessee won it. Nico hit Brazel in the end zone. That was a very difficult throw. He hit, I think it was Thornton down the sideline, and really, I mean, it was just a couple of plays. That was the difference. And there was about 3 other touchdowns to be made that were not. So I mean, heck, they could have blown them out, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. But all right, enough of all this. Time for Steven to make his prediction. Who's winning this game?
So if Nico plays, this is my prediction. I'm going to take Georgia in a close one. Give me the Georgia Bulldogs 24, the Tennessee Volunteers 20. Low scoring, probably a little bit more low scoring than probably some people are anticipating. But I think Georgia at home, defense, I think maybe Carson Beck cuts down on the mistakes this week, and they get the big victory.
Are you at all concerned, given the spread, given that Georgia's fighting for their lives potentially here, that they could whoop Tennessee? Because the spread is seemingly begging for people to take Tennessee. It's either that or it's so high because of Nico's status. I don't know if it's one or the other, but this almost feels like a classic. Vegas is just begging everybody, even if they think, just like you said. Most people I've heard make predictions for this game have said exactly what you just said, Stephen. I like Georgia, but I like Tennessee to cover. They are begging people to take Tennessee in the plus 10, plus 9.5. What are the odds that Georgia blows them out here?
I think there's a chance, don't you? I mean, I could see I guess I hate to go back to what we talk about almost every week, is like, it feels like Georgia's going to play up to their standard this week. And, we haven't seen that most weeks, but with everything on the line and giving the playoff hopes and things for the SEC, I would not be surprised to see this team come through with one of its best showings at all. One thing I will tell you, I was looking at some advanced analytics models for this game to take my own eyes and vision out of it. They both have this as a close one-score game too. So maybe Vegas is suckering us all into thinking that this is going to be close, and or suckering us into believing that Tennessee's got a chance and a very motivated Georgia team shows up.
Yeah, we'll see. Stephen, cannot wait to find out. Before you go, as always, Tell people how they can follow you and how can they find your work.
Absolutely. You can follow all my work over at athlonsports.com. I am at Athlon Steven on Twitter, Steven L. CFB on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, Steven, thank you so much once again for dropping all this knowledge on us. Cousin Shane's going to be logging on here in about 5 minutes. We're going to do our latest mailbag episode of the show. But until then, see you in about 4 minutes. That's all I got. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Steven. We'll catch you on the next one.